So we're going to talk about the name of the chapter is the Federal Reserve System and open market operations. I put Fed in parentheses. Money and banking used to be a required course in the College of Business, and as a 300 level course. Classes were a little smaller. Maybe they topped out at 50 or so, 40 or 50, I forget which. But they were small enough that I could ask an essay question. And one of the things I worked hard to try to get my students not to sound uneducated with, and I've tried this in Principles of Economics. Any fans of old movies here? Anybody watch old movies from the 30s, etc., 40s? The Fed, as we will see in this chapter, is the U.S. central bank. In old movies, maybe even among gangsters today, the Feds are who?
FBI.
Huh?
The police, FBI.
Yeah, the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Secret Service, etc., the DEA, the Feds. So don't say the Feds when you mean the Fed. It'll make you sound very good. You know, I don't have any essay, so I can't mark you off on that. But still, it's not a matter of the essays. We know what we're talking about in here. We want you to sound educated when you come out here. So, the Fed. But we'll get to that later. All right, we're going to start by talking about money. Money is whatever people use in exchange. So for your colleagues that aren't here, I could put on a true-false question. Something like true-false, money is whatever the government declares is legal tender. And what's the answer? False. It's whatever people use as exchange. Right now, I guess we sort of use whatever the government declares as legal tender, but that's really probably not true. What do most of us use as in exchange now? Most of us buy, what's the thing you use the most to purchase things? Probably checks, right? How many people buy most things with checks? Nobody? Anybody? I think I purchase most things I buy with checks. Am I the only modern person here?
A debit card takes the purpose out of checks.
Yeah, a debit card's an implicit check. Right, you don't fill it out, but what is it? What's a check?
Pulls it out of your checking account.
Pulls it out of your checking account. What's a debit card do, or even if you go through the credit system, it pulls it out of your bank, out of your checking account. So, in fact, how many people have not paid for anything in cash this week? Yeah, then you should, you know, if you think about it, you should never fall for that trick that money's whatever the government declares as legal tender, because you haven't used it all week, right? In fact, from time to time I wonder about silly things, but I wonder Is it third grade in Alabama? How many people went to school, elementary school in Alabama? Is it third grade that they have the little things showing you all the coins and some of the bills, and teach you about money and making change? It's third or fourth, or I guess it could be fifth or second, I don't know. But it seems third or fourth is the age I remember it happening. I didn't go to school in Alabama, but I remember seeing kids having things signs like that. I wonder if they still do. I guess they still do that, right? So, whatever use exchange means that it serves the functions of money. And the functions of money are, one, acting as a medium of exchange. Why do you accept dollar bills? Why do you accept transfers into your bank account? Why do you accept them? How many of you have a job? How many people are paid in cash in their job? How many people are paid in direct deposit? How many people are paid in checks? Anybody get a check? Anybody work for Goodrich? My college roommate worked for Goodrich, and it's a British firm. And banking historically wasn't as advanced in England, at least advanced for the working classes as it was in the United States. So in college, when I was in college, every week, at the end of the week, Goodrich would pay him in cash. So we'd go to the bank and deposit cash. And I guess if you're any waiter or waitresses or bartenders, or you get paid at least some in cash, right? They don't take the cash from you every night, do they? In some ways, that'd be safer. Just put it into their account and then have it transferred to your bank account when they give you a check. Or do they direct deposit your check? But they don't take the cash from you. I mean, it'd be record keeping for them. It'd be safer in several dimensions. What dimensions would it be safer in? You wouldn't lose it, wouldn't get mugged or robbed. It would be out of your untrustworthy hands. I try to keep as little cash in my pocket as possible so I don't fritter it away. Or even before debit cards, I tried to keep not too much cash in my pocket so that I would say, I have to have that candy bar. I was never a smoker, but I know that's how smokers are, right? I've got the money, I need this cigarette. So, this acting as a medium of exchange avoids the need for a double coincidence of wants. Now, that seems like a pretty complicated, old-fashioned phrase. I'm pretty sure it did come from someplace in the past when people spoke more flowery. But what does double mean? Anybody, what does double mean? You don't know? Yeah, well, not more than one. It means two. What does coincidence mean? Yeah, maybe something happens accidentally, But coincidental could also mean at the same time, right? Supposedly, the registration system here, much to the consternation of you sometimes, won't let you take coincidental classes, right? You can't argue with it and say, well, that class is really easy, so I'm never gonna go. I'm only gonna go to this class, but I wanna get credit for both of them. That's not the way classes are supposed to be. So it won't let you take them. So we've got two at the same time once. Right, so, are you a waiter or waitress or a bartender? Waitress. So if you wanna get your annual checkup, you don't have to find a physician that wants to eat at your restaurant. Right, it'd be sort of hard to do that, right? Here you are, you want to, have an economics lecture, you don't have to go find some economist to eat at your restaurant, right? We can specialize. And this is really, it's vastly more efficient to have a medium of exchange. And you accept something as a medium of exchange because you feel confident you can take this money and get the value of your time, right? You're working as a sales clerk in a store, so you've given up 6 hours of your time, let's say, on a shift. You get a certain amount of money, and you think you're gonna be able to get goods worth that, right? Because you don't want all those green pieces of paper, really. I mean, you only want them because you can spend them for. And so it's vastly more efficient. There's only really one time that we still use barter a lot. How many people have ever been to a pizza restaurant? So you look around the pizza restaurant when you're there, can you imagine somebody's there with a pizza when they'd rather be with a different pizza? Right, well, maybe there's somebody that's got small kids that are making them eat cheese-only pizzas, you know, it can come up. But in general, the people in the pizza restaurant, or maybe you're with a big group and you had to compromise, they wouldn't let you get anchovies. You're the one person in the world that likes anchovies on pizzas. But barring that, or you're from England and you want corn on your pizza. Thankfully, you can't get that in the United States. But in general, when you go to a restaurant, you get what you want, right? On the other hand, how many people ever been to a couples party in here, right? Can you imagine two people being at a couples party with each other when each of them would rather be with somebody else who's at the party? And maybe that person even would rather be with them,
That just
right?
sounds like a swingers party.
Well, but if it's not that kind of party, it doesn't work out. What's the deal? What's the deal? We allocate pizzas by price. We allocate our time in the social market by barter. Why do we allocate, price is more efficient, why do we allocate the social market by price? Do you suspect? Right, I mean, the reality, I used to teach the principles of microeconomics when we would get to something like this, and I guess it's sort of the right time now, when the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue would come out. And I would ask all the women in class who would run from men and say, how many of these men do you think are gonna be dating international swimsuit models anytime soon? Why? We were talking about choice and allocation of goods at the time, so international swimsuit models aren't in their choice set any more than they're in my choice set, right? You can't afford them, is another way to put it, right? So we sort of know that, right? You're sort of assigning prices there, but why don't we do it? Well, that would involve a little price tag kind of on your ear or stamped on your forehead. And what if your price tag were lower than your basically, you don't wanna know, we don't, you know, we probably all have a price higher than maybe the market clearing price for us is. And just, we don't wanna allocate that way, right? It's not a, you know. We would rather barter. We would rather have the inefficiency of barter than allocate by having the brutal information of a price there. So, acting as a medium of exchange is one, storing value is a second function of money. And again, because when you get done being a waitress, what time do you get off?
Like 8 or 9.
8 or 9, but does your restaurant stay open later than that? Sometimes you might get off at 11. Right, you can't go spend the money on the way home, right? Walmart's closed. So, you not only have to think you're gonna get the amount of goods worth your time, but you gotta think you're gonna get the amount of goods worth your time you know, tomorrow or next week, whenever you spend the money. And so people don't spend money to avoid a capital loss or a loss in value, or hold money to get a capital gain. All right, we want you to be able to hold on money for a while, but we don't want people just hoarding money. We want money to flow through the system. And if money is rising in value, if prices are falling so that your money will buy more tomorrow than it will today, what will you tend to do? Hold on to it until tomorrow. But then you get to tomorrow and you know it's going to rise in value even more. So you hold on to it till the next day. That doesn't help the economy work good. The opposite is true of when prices are going up and the value of money is falling. It can become like a hot potato. You want to get it out of your hands as soon as possible. During one of the worst hyperinflations in Europe, I think I've mentioned this before, German workers were paid at noon so they could spend the money at noon, because by the end of the day it would be worth even less. I guess that also means your afternoon pay rate was higher than your morning pay rate. I don't know. If prices are going up that fast, you have to increase pay to get people to come back. But you want to spend your money before it's worthless. Well, if that happens, then it's not acting as a medium of exchange, right? People are dumping it because they know it's not going to have any value, or people are holding on and they're not spending it. It's not acting as a medium of exchange. So it has to store value to act as a medium of exchange, to be money. These two are necessary functions of money. The third one is not necessary. It is acting as a unit of account. So there are in prices in the economy rather than n by n minus 1 divided by 2 prices. Right now, how many prices are there in the economy? In the number of goods, right? If you don't have a unit of account, any accounting majors in here? We've got a couple times. Or if we don't have a unit of account, then we have this matrix. So we have cows. Price of a cow in terms of a cow is 1. You swap them 1 for 1. They're not perfectly homogeneous, but go with me on this. We add in, if we have an economy with horses and cows. Then we'll have the price of cows in terms of horses, and the price of horses in terms of cows, and the price of horses in terms of horses is 1. If we add in pigs, then we'll get the price of cows in terms of pigs, the price of horses in terms of pigs, the price of pigs in terms of cows, and the price of pigs in terms of horses. And then a pig costs a pig. Okay, so we got 3 goods. So what happens? Well, clearly what's true about the price of cows in terms of horses and the price of horses in terms of cows. If it's 2 horses per cow, then it should be half a cow per horse, right? Those are the same thing. So we get rid of this part of the matrix, right? We could add in more goods, but we get rid of half of it. Everything on the diagonal is a 1, which is why we subtract out the 1 here. And which is why we divide, we subtract out the 1. We divide by 2 to get rid of the upper half of the matrix, and we subtract out the 1 to get rid of the diagonal of 1s. And think about it, if there are 500 goods, if n equals 500, then with a unit of account, we have 500 prices, right? So 499 times 250. Did I get that right? I don't think I did. Oh, wait, it has to go over 1 because of the 0. I still don't think I got it right. What am I doing wrong today? No wonder I allow you to use calculators now. $124.75. $750. So 0, 5, carrier 4, 9, carrier 4, and 8. Yes, that's correct. So, but what's the point? Which is easier to deal with? 500 prices or 124,750 prices? 500 is a lot easier to deal with. How many people have had an accounting class? How would you like to have an accounting class with, right, are there 500 goods in society? No, there's a lot more than 500 goods. So how would you like to have an accounting class where you had all these prices to keep track of, and to keep the price of everything and everything else, in terms of everything else? In fact, of course, when the store value function of money breaks down like in hyperinflations, guess what companies start doing? They start keeping their books in pound sterling or US dollars or some other currency. Keep it in some other currency so that you don't have to change your books all the time, that the values in your books aren't changing constantly by huge amounts. And I think recently Zimbabwe had a hyperinflation, by the way. All right, so those are the functions of money. Money developed organically. In society. So, basically in different societies, money developed differently. In the Aztec economy, well, in many places in the world, we're going to end up with gold and silver as money, right? Before we get to paper money, we get to gold and silver as money. How many people knew that gold and silver treated as money? Or, in fact, money meant gold and silver many times in history. But the Aztecs actually used as money seeds of the cacao tree, chocolate seeds. And I read a book recently that said not only did they use it as money, and in fact, it's sort of money first probably developed because somebody wanted to make a barter trade, but the trade wasn't quite equal, like the horses and cows. Maybe they weren't equal, maybe they weren't whole numbers, right? You can't really, if you're trading live animal, you can't really give half a cow. But you could throw in some of these seeds that have value, known value to the people in the culture. So it turns out that not only were these cacao seeds used, but they were counterfeited. Some of them. Now, how would you counterfeit a seed? Well, what we see as the seed often is the husk, the outside of it. So what you do is you take the actual seed out of the husk, or what some people did. Take the actual seed out of the husk and then fill it up with mud and let it dry out. And then you have a counterfeit seed. So even some counterfeiting went along, occurred in the Aztec culture. But various things developed over time as money were heading from various commodities to gold and silver, then paper money, and then electrons. Where we've gotten today is electrons, really notices in ledgers someplace. And but people before that used lots of different things. What types of things? Anybody know of any of the types of things that were used as money? Gold and silver, of course. Gemstones, I guess. Wampum, right? The Indians who may or may not have owned Manhattan Island traded it for beads. Of course, $24 worth of beads in the 16th century is apparently worth about the same as the assessed value of all the property in Manhattan today, if you bring it forward. So the Indians didn't get cheated as much as you might think. And there was lots of land around to go to. Woodpecker pelts were used. Beaver's pelts were very popular in the West. Bear pelts, I guess. In the South Pacific, these 18, 20-foot rocks were used, which is sort of weird, right? Can't carry those around very easily, because you just assign them to people. It was a way of a family to show they were industrious within the culture. And to get these rocks, they actually had to go to another island and carve these rocks out of the stone, put them in their boat or canoe, and bring them back to the home island. There they'd stand them up someplace and they'd never move, they just assigned. And one family went and got their rock, and everybody knew they got their rock and they were bringing it back, and they were hit by a storm and the rock fell overboard and went to the bottom of the ocean. But it still had as much value as anybody else's. It's not like people were really doing hand-to-hand exchanges with them. It's sort of interesting. And the reason what developed as money developed is characteristics of money. Money has various characteristics. One is portability. Can you recognize gold and silver? Well, they had a way in the West, they, you know, for 1,000 years, they had a way. They would do little chemical tests on them, so were able to recognize them. If I showed up with a coin, a fool's gold and a coin of gold, could you figure out which is which? I don't know that I could. I don't know, maybe. I don't know, but, one thing about gold and silver is they're not magnetic, so maybe you can test them with a magnet. Can you recognize dollar bills? Well, I don't know, have you ever accepted a counterfeit? One that, not that you know of, but, you know. But they're pretty recognizable. And of course, is your bank account recognizable? Or you stick it in that machine and the bank sends a signal to it and your card, the chip on your card sends back another signal and says you actually exist, this card actually exists, you have a bank account. So, uniformity. Or homogeneity. I took this law school for economist course that a university put on apparently there was a big legal case, somebody bought a cow, somebody bought a barren cow. Of course, you know what happened next, right? The barren cow produced a calf. The person that sold it demanded more money and won, because they traded it at the price for a barren cow as opposed to the price for a fertile cow. Cows aren't very divisible, pigs aren't very divisible either, or at least it changes their value. The sixth one is acceptability. I was on a sports talk website type thing, a sports talk thing, talking with some fans of the same program. So it was I ran into one of these gold bug people. He was a lawyer. Said, if you want to be on the gold standard, there's a real easy solution here, right? You hang up a sign outside your office saying, we only accept gold as payment. If you think the gold standard is better, right? I mean, that's how we ended up on gold and silver, right? Somebody said, well, gold and silver is better than chocolate seeds, or gold and silver is better than wheat, or cows, or pigs. You know, it's a matter of what people will accept. Will people accept dollar bills? Less and less, it seems, right? Which is an interesting phenomenon we'll talk about in a minute. Maybe if we get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it today. But, right, I thought COVID might kill the dollar bill. Why is that? Do I have any germ phobes in here? Somebody wants to volunteer that you're a germ phobe? Sort of. What's true about dollar bills? Yeah, they're pretty dirty. So, I know a germ phobe who doesn't like to take them, but does. Scarcity. I mean, ultimately the thing that's held up gold and silver over the years was that they were scarce enough. Paper money is not scarce enough, so the government did what? They monopolized the production of it. Right, in the early 1800s in the United States, banks could issue banknotes. But they have an incentive to issue too many. The government decided to monopolize it. And an important lesson in life for you has a little bit to do with economics, but it's very important in life, is what's true about the government. Well, they'll enforce crimes committed against you. If you get assaulted, somebody kills you, they'll make some effort to enforce laws. They care some. If you commit a crime against the government, what do? Right, they come, you counterfeit money, or you, right? Essentially, as soon as we got deposit insurance, what happened to bank robbery in the United States? It went from being a professional's crime to being an amateur's crime, because they will get you in bank robbery. I guess occasionally somebody gets away with it for 3 or 4 bank robberies. But in general, you've robbed a federally insured institution, and therefore you have the federal government coming down on you. I actually got called to jury once over somebody that stole some check and deposited it in Social Security check or something like that, and deposited it in an insured bank, and of course the government was very unhappy with them, whereas just stealing a check, or just stealing, if you don't involve the government in it, stealing some money, you won't hear from the federal government. Yes?
I worked at a bank that got robbed, and the guy, he was dead in 2 hours because he ran and they had a shootout and just killed him.
Yeah, they will. Well, that used to happen, right? Did I tell the story of the Dillinger gang in here ever? Well, it's because we haven't got to deposit insurance yet. The Dillinger gang, before there was deposit insurance, showed up, I think it was Northfield, Minnesota. They went to, some people in Minnesota, in this town in Minnesota, started noticing these famous bank robbers showing up in town. Now, if you thought there were bank robbers showing up in town, what would you do?
Draw your money.
Well, maybe, but it's insured. I think today, the best advice for most people is, if you think there's a gang of bank robbers in town, stay the hell away from the bank. Don't get caught in the crossfire, right? But there was no deposit insurance then. If they stole the money from the bank, the people of Northfield, Minnesota wouldn't have the money to buy the seed corn to plant that year. So they went home and got their guns. And they had a shootout with them. And drove them out of town. Killed several of them. Didn't kill Dillinger, but killed several. So, deposit insurance changes a lot of things about it. But it also makes, rather than us having to shoot out, we'll let the cops have to shoot out. And we don't have to get, because probably some citizens, I don't remember the details, but, probably wasn't likely that the citizens came out clean. Some people probably got hurt. But I mean, it was their livelihood. It was the town's livelihood they were stealing. There wasn't deposit insurance. So that's scarcity, and then finally, stable value. And this is really the one where I use the alcohol example, right? Alcohol goes up in value, which makes it unsuitable as a medium of exchange, but it has been used at times and places, right? Cigarettes are used and were used in prison or prisoner of war camps. They are portable. They're as durable as a dollar not so divisible, although, you know, we're talking unfiltered, I guess you can cut a cigarette in half, right? Nobody wants to confess to being a cigarette smoker. How many people have seen a cigarette smoker pull one out of an ashtray when they ran out of cigarettes? Yeah, so it does happen. You didn't recognize them. Although, when I taught at the largest maximum security prison in Florida, they did away with this while I was teaching there. They had these things called RIP cigarettes, where the state of Florida would buy up surplus Florida tobacco, and they had a rolling machine in the prison. They'd make these cigarettes and distribute them. I guess they, you know, as things got more and more modern, people sort of viewed it as a form of slow capital punishment. So maybe we shouldn't give prisoners cigarettes to kill themselves with. Are they uniform? Yeah. They were acceptable, they were pretty scarce. There was an exchange rate, actual real Marlboros traded at a higher value than the RIP cigarettes in prison, as you might imagine. But you can see how organically money developed over time. The government started stamping the face of the ruler on the money, guaranteeing that it was a certain size. So we started getting types of money. And so at first money was full-bodied. But then it became token. Right? Pound sterling, even the name. I think franc, but we don't know French, but pound, what does that? Sterling is sterling silver, so the value of a pound was the value of 1 pound of silver, originally. But what happens over time? You coin a coin that's got a certain amount of silver on it, and what happens to the value of that coin? What happens to the price of silver?
Goes up.
It either goes up or goes down. If it goes up, what happens? They melt down the coin and sell it for silver. If it goes down in value, then it's a token. It's no longer worth the face value of it. And this is something sometimes called Gresham's Law. It really, as I said, goes back to the ancients. Copernicus also thought of this earlier than Gresham, but Gresham's Law is bad money drives out good money. Or if you have two types of money, one's more valuable than the other, which one are you going to spend? Which one are you going to give me? Right? You want an economics class, so you're going to give me the good money or the bad money? The more valuable money or the less valuable money? They have the same face value. You're going to give me the less valuable. So even if the silver coin isn't melted down and sold for silver right away, you don't circulate it, right? Because it's worth more as silver. You don't want to, the silver that after the pound of silver has gone up in value, you don't want to spend it. So it quits circulating, and only the bad money circulates. Only the less valuable money circulates. I guess there's sort of fiat money versus commodity money. A fiat's an Italian car, but it's also what? A government decree. I guess when mom said, you will not play in the living room. A mom decree, a mom fiat. Well, fiat's just a decree. And so the government says this is money versus commodity. The problem with that is when this terminology developed, commodity money they thought of as gold and silver, coins, copper, and paper money as fiat money. Well, paper is a commodity. A guy who, I think I used this example in the first day of class when we talked about incentives matter. An economist who was really an agricultural economist, who was a famous guy who was very political, became the U.S. ambassador to India at one time in his career, really tall too. He was, he went to St. Petersburg after the Russian Revolution. I think actually after the first revolution, but before the second revolution. I think he was in there between the revolutions anyway. He was riding the tram system, and he had his rubles in one pocket, and being you go to less developed countries, what do you need to take with you? Soft Americans. Toilet paper. We had his toilet paper in another pocket, he had his pockets picked, and what did the thieves take from him? Toilet paper. The rubles didn't have very much value. But they actually are paper. They probably, currency wouldn't be very comfortable, toilet paper probably, but I don't know, in the 1800s they used pine cones, it would probably look better than the pine cones. So, but fiat money is government decree. You could say, or you could even say it's private decree, right? We use these electrons now. Are they a commodity? Well, they do have value. So, I don't know, maybe they're a commodity, but you could think of electrons as fiat money, right? Just by decree. Money because we say it's money. And the last idea is legal tender. And what does legal tender mean? During the 30s, when people weren't spending money, if you see a $100 bill from the 30s, it has a big paragraph on there saying that it's legal tender. Well, all I have is 10 euros, so I can't tell you anything about American money today. But I think it just says on dollars now, this is legal tender. Maybe this is legal tender, good for all debt, public and private. But basically what it means, now I don't want anybody to cause trouble in their life with this, but what it means is, if you offer to pay somebody legal tender, they can't use court systems to enforce the debt if they refuse to. Now you need to argue with a cop, try and put your stuff out on the street to evict you because you offered your landlord cash and they wouldn't take it. So don't make your life miserable. But that's what it means. I did have by the way, what's legal tender in the United States? Really, it's easier to think of what's not legal tender. All the money in the United States is legal tender except what? More than 25 pennies and the $10,000 bill. Well, I was watching an old TV series and there used to be $500 bills and $1,000 bills, but there aren't anymore. $100 bills are top, except for this $10,000 bill that nobody's ever seen one.
Well, you can still use the $500 and $1,000 ones, but
I don't know if you can or not. I mean, it's sort of like saying, I bet you can use Deutschmarks in Germany. I mean, they were withdrawn from circulation, so the question is, will somebody take it from you? And of course, it's probably more valuable as a collector's item than it is as $500. So anyone should take it, but it should go out of circulation as soon as you try to spend it. You know, the next person should take it and sell it. You know, I guess we can imagine you have stumbled on an old cache of money out in the Mojave Desert. You're coming in dying of thirst, so you buy a bottle of Dasani water, and all you got is the $500 bill you discover. You know, I mean, you could come up with a concoct a scenario, but since it's not legal tender anymore, it's probably more a barter scenario than anything else. Yes?
The $500 bill is legal tender, but the reason people don't see it is because, the market value is higher than the face value.
Yeah, I mean, so that's, the bills have gone out of, because they were withdrawn, so the ones that are left, I guess. So, I did have a student, I guess somebody offended him, he told me about it, so I must not have been the one to offend him at the university, who paid his tuition in nickels. Again, somebody was being paid by the hour to count the nickels. They had to do something, so they counted the nickels. And the person who counted the nickels probably wasn't the person that offended him, right? So, I mean, it's just sort of, you know, I mean, in some sense, why, right? Why? What do you accomplish? I guess if you're mad at all of us here because somebody offended you, I sort of understand it. A million years ago, I was young and got angry too. Now I'm just beaten down. Get angry less. All right, so that's good. We're about to talk about how banks create money. So this is a good place to stop.